I remember the first time I felt the thrill of a forbidden kiss, a moment when passion, betrayal, and longing collided in a single heartbeat. It was a night of secrets and whispered confessions, a night that would forever alter my destiny. I, Maria, found myself entangled in a love that defied expectations, a love that bridged generations and broke cultural taboos. My journey into this labyrinth of desire began when I met Ayansh, a dignified Indian widower of 62 years, living in a quaint neighborhood in the USA. His presence was commanding yet gentle, a man whose traditional values masked the deep currents of a hidden life. With his salt and pepper hair and soulful eyes, Ayansh carried the weight of his past, a past filled with love lost and secrets carefully preserved. Ayansh's world was one of order and respectability, where every gesture was measured and every word carried meaning. His family expected nothing less than perfection, and in many ways, he was the pillar around which their world spun. But behind the calm exterior lay a man who longed for companionship and passion, a man who had begun courting me not merely out of desire, but also to honor his family's wishes. His pursuit was a carefully constructed affair, a marriage of convenience, tradition, and hidden indulgences. I was drawn to Ayansh like a moth to a flame. There was something both mysterious and tender about him, a charm that belied the strict adherence to cultural norms he was known for. In his eyes, I saw a glimmer of vulnerability, a secret sorrow that resonated with my own restless spirit. I, too, had always lived on the fringes of what was expected, questioning the rigid boundaries set by society. Little did I know that this journey would soon lead me to another forbidden connection, one that would shatter even the most carefully constructed facades. As our meetings grew more frequent, Ayansh would share stories of his youth, tales of a time when his world was simpler, yet filled with complexities of its own. I listened intently, my heart both aching and elated, as if each word revealed a new layer of his soul. Yet, amid the growing intimacy, I sensed a deeper secret lurking beneath the surface, a secret that involved his daughter, Arna. Arna was a striking young woman with a fierce spirit and a tender heart. Although she carried the legacy of her father's traditional beliefs, there was an unmistakable spark in her eyes that hinted at a different kind of life, one unafraid to challenge conventions. Unbeknownst to Ayansh, Arna and I shared a connection that transcended the ordinary. Our clandestine meetings started innocently, over coffee in quiet corners of the city, and slowly blossomed into something far more passionate, a secret romance that defied all expectations. I still recall the first time Arna confessed her feelings to me. It was a rainy afternoon, the kind that painted the world in shades of melancholy and hope. We had met at a small art gallery in downtown, our conversation flowing as naturally as the raindrops on the window pane. With trembling hands and a voice barely above a whisper, she admitted that her heart belonged to me, a confession that sent a shiver of both joy and terror through my entire being. That moment was both a promise and a curse, binding us together in a dangerous dance of desire and deception. Every encounter with Arna was filled with the electric tension of secrecy, and yet it was the purest form of love I had ever known. We would steal away to abandoned parks, hidden corners of the city where the only witness to our passion was the silent night. In those fleeting moments, the burdens of our worlds melted away, leaving behind nothing but raw, unfiltered emotion. But as the days passed, the risk of exposure grew with every stolen glance and every secret smile. Meanwhile, Ayansh continued his courtship with a determined grace, carefully balancing his duty to his family and the stirring of his long-dormant desires. His interactions with me were laced with a strange mix of tenderness and restraint, a constant reminder that our affair was as much about fulfilling family obligations as it was about satisfying hidden cravings. I could see the conflict in his eyes when he looked at me, a silent struggle between what was expected of him and what he truly desired. The duality of my existence, the public facade with Ayansh and the clandestine passion with Arna, placed me in a constant state of inner turmoil. Every moment was fraught with tension, every smile a mask hiding deeper fears. I began to wonder how long we could maintain this delicate balance before the weight of our secrets would come crashing down upon us. As I write these words, I am overwhelmed by the bittersweet memories of that time. The nights spent in whispered intimacy, the stolen moments of ecstasy, and the constant threat of discovery, all of it is etched into my soul. I know now that love, in its most forbidden form, carries a price that is both heavy and inevitable. This is only the beginning of a story that weaves together the lives of a traditional Indian widower, his devoted daughter, and a woman caught in the crossfire of their entwined destinies. As the first chapter of my memoir, this introduction serves as a warning and an invitation, a warning of the dangers of secrets, and an invitation to delve deeper into a world where love defies all boundaries. And so, with a heart still racing from the memories of that fateful night, I invite you to follow me on this journey of passion, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of a love that dared to challenge the norms of tradition. Little did I know then how the threads of our lives would weave a tapestry of heartbreak, passion, and irrevocable change, a tapestry that, even now, leaves me questioning if some secrets are meant to remain hidden forever. I still remember the first time I truly realized how our hidden ties were slowly binding us together. It was during one of those ordinary days that turned extraordinary with a single moment of unspoken understanding. I had met Ayansh through a family introduction, an event where the air was thick with expectation and formality. Though his eyes were kind, there was an intensity there that hinted at a world of unfulfilled desires. Our conversation began with cautious politeness, yet as the evening wore on, a slow-burn attraction emerged. I found myself drawn not only to his dignified exterior, but also to the vulnerability that peeked through his guarded words. Ayansh had made it clear that his courtship of me was partly driven by his duty to appease his family. They expected him to follow traditions, and in doing so, he believed that finding a suitable companion would honor their legacy. In many ways, his careful and respectful approach felt like a performance, a balancing act between duty and desire. Every smile he shared, every thoughtful word, seemed weighed down by the pressure of family expectations. I felt both flattered and conflicted. Flattered because I was chosen by a man who had a storied past and a gentle heart. Conflicted because I sensed that beneath the surface lay secrets waiting to be revealed. While my meetings with Ayansh were filled with formal dinners and carefully planned outings, another world beckoned me, the clandestine realm of my meetings with Arna. Arna, with her fierce eyes and a smile that spoke of rebellion, was a constant reminder that the heart often defies reason. Our first encounter was accidental. We bumped into each other in a quiet corner of a local bookstore. It was then that I noticed how her presence seemed to pull me into a vortex of warmth and promise. We exchanged a few shy words and soon discovered a shared love for art, literature, and the thrill of living life on our own terms. Our initial conversations were light and innocent. However, as we continued to meet over cups of coffee in little cafes and strolls in quiet parks, our bond deepened. There was an unspoken language between us, one that conveyed more than words ever could. I would catch glimpses of the unfiltered passion in her eyes, and I realized that our connection was evolving into something far more dangerous and beautiful. Every stolen moment with Arna felt like a rebellion against a world that demanded conformity and silence. In contrast to the structured and restrained life with Ayansh, my time with Arna was liberating. With her, I could be honest and raw. We talked about everything, from our dreams and regrets to our hidden desires. In her company, I felt alive in ways I had never experienced before. Yet, as our passion grew, so did the risk of exposure. We became masters of disguise, careful to meet only when the world was asleep or distracted by its own trivialities. Every shared look and gentle touch carried the weight of a secret that could shatter lives if it were ever brought to light. Despite the thrill, I often found myself torn between two very different worlds. With Ayansh, I was stepping into a role that demanded respectability and adherence to traditional values. His family, his culture, and his past all required that we maintain a certain decorum. In those meetings, every word was measured, every gesture planned. There was a grace in the way Ayangsh navigated his dual life, but the performance was always underlined with the knowledge that there was something missing, a spark that only the forbidden could ignite. One evening, I had to attend a family dinner at Ayangsh's home, an event that was supposed to celebrate a recent milestone in his career. The dining room was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft murmur of respectful conversation. I sat at the head of the table, flanked by family members whose eyes seemed to study every nuance of our interactions. I could feel the pressure building as I tried to keep my heart from racing with the secrets I held inside. The dinner took an unexpected turn when one of Ayangsh's cousins, Ravi, made an offhand comment about how everyone in the family seemed to be leading double lives. His words were meant to be a joke, but they hung in the air like a dark cloud. For a moment, my heart nearly stopped. I glanced at Ayangsh, who met my gaze with a mixture of concern and determination. I knew he was aware of the delicate balance we were trying to maintain, even if the details of my heart's true longing were hidden from him. Later that night, as I excused myself to take a phone call in the hallway, I heard hushed voices from behind a partially open door. It was a conversation that could only be about our secret, a murmur of suspicions and quiet warnings. My pulse pounded in my ears as I wondered how much the others might have gleaned from our every subtle move. In that moment, I felt as if time had slowed, each second a stretch of fear and anticipation. Could our hidden ties withstand the pressure of a world so intent on preserving its traditions? That single, almost imperceptible moment marked a turning point, a cliffhanger that left me trembling with both dread and an unexpected thrill. I knew then that our lives were on the brink of a dangerous collision. Every secret glance, every whispered word between Arna and me had grown into a bond that was as perilous as it was beautiful. The risk of exposure was no longer a distant fear, but a looming possibility that threatened to unravel everything we had built. As I returned to the dining hall, my heart raced not just from the fear of discovery, but also from the overwhelming certainty that our lives would never be the same. I had to ask myself, could I continue to lead a double life? Would the love I shared with Arna survive the inevitable confrontation with tradition, duty, and the relentless gaze of those around us? In that charged atmosphere, with the echoes of secret conversations and the weight of unspoken words pressing in on all sides, I realized that our hidden ties were more than just a rebellion. They were a testament to the fierce desire to live authentically, a desire that, even if it risked everything, could not be ignored. And as the night wore on, the seeds of a tumultuous future were sown, promising more revelations, more conflicts, and more moments where our hearts would be laid bare for the world to see. With every beat of my heart, I felt both the joy of our clandestine love and the fear of its inevitable unraveling, a tension that would continue to shape our destinies in ways we could never have imagined. It began with a whisper, a hint of a secret too heavy to keep hidden. I had sensed it for weeks, that unsettling feeling that every stolen moment, every secret smile, was slowly tightening the noose around our fragile world. My heart pounded with a mix of desire and dread as the tapestry of lies we had so carefully woven started to unravel. It all came to a head one overcast afternoon. I had been meeting Arna at our usual little cafe near the park, a haven where our conversations flowed as freely as our forbidden desires. That day, however, something was different. A quiet tension hung in the air. Arna's eyes, usually so lively and teasing, were clouded with worry as she hesitated before speaking. "Maria, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling ever so slightly. Her hands fidgeted with a small bracelet on her wrist, a gift from someone she once trusted. I felt the familiar surge of adrenaline mixed with anxiety. Our clandestine meetings had always been a delicate dance of passion and secrecy, but now the rhythm had faltered. I reached across the table, gently holding her hand. "What is it, Arna? You look troubled," I murmured. She took a deep breath before confessing that she had seen things she shouldn't have. Furtive glances, hurried whispers in the corridors of Ayangsh's grand home. The thought that someone might have caught even a glimpse of our secret left me cold with fear. as she recounted what she had overheard, a conversation between one of Ayansh's cousins and an unexpected family friend. The magnitude of our situation hit me hard. We were teetering on the edge of exposure, and the risk of our hidden affair becoming public was growing with every passing day. The conversation left us both silent, the cafe's background murmur a stark contrast to the storm raging in our hearts. Later that evening, the situation escalated further. I returned home from a meeting with Ayansh, who, as always, maintained his calm and dignified facade. But I noticed that something was off. His eyes, usually so composed when he spoke of family traditions and honor, now flickered with an inner turmoil. He kept glancing at his phone as if waiting for a message that might confirm his worst fears. Our conversation during dinner was strained, filled with long pauses and awkward silences. I sensed that he too was aware that something was amiss, yet he chose not to confront it directly. The following day, a confrontation was inevitable. While I was walking through a quiet, tree-lined street, I received an urgent call from Arna. Her voice, usually warm and reassuring, was edged with panic. "Maria, I need to see you now. Please meet me at the old community center," she pleaded. I agreed without hesitation, feeling the weight of the secret we carried with every step. At the community center, under the dim glow of fluorescent lights, Arna's distress was palpable. "I can't keep living like this, Maria," she confessed, her voice breaking. "Every moment we spend together, I'm haunted by the fear that someone, somewhere, is watching us. I'm terrified that our secret will come out, and I don't know what will happen then." Her words resonated deeply within me. I, too, was tormented by the constant balancing act between our illicit passion and the reality of the world we lived in. The tension was suffocating, like a storm that threatened to tear apart the delicate bonds that held us together. We both knew that if our secret were exposed, it wouldn't just destroy our lives, but also shatter the fragile relationships that tied us to our families and traditions. "I'm scared, Arna," I admitted softly, my own voice thick with emotion. "I never imagined that our love could bring so much pain along with it. But I can't stop loving you. I'm caught between the allure of this forbidden passion and the crushing weight of our hidden reality." In that moment, the magnitude of our situation became starkly clear. We were living on borrowed time, and every stolen moment was a step closer to disaster. Meanwhile, Ayansh, ever the dutiful patriarch, was wrestling with his own internal conflicts. He had chosen me as a partner to fulfill his family's expectations, yet his heart was clearly divided, a division that was becoming increasingly difficult to hide. I later learned that Ayansh had begun noticing discrepancies in our lives. Subtle hints, a missed call here, an unexplained absence there, had ignited his suspicions. It pained me to think that the man I once saw as a gentle, longing soul was now caught in a web of suspicion and inner conflict. His eyes, which once held so much promise, now flashed with the uncertainty of a man on the brink of losing control. That night, as I lay in bed, the weight of our situation pressed down on me like a heavy shroud. Every creak of the floorboard, every rustle of the wind outside, seemed to echo the fear of discovery. I knew that soon, the carefully built facade of our double lives might crumble completely. The thought of a family scandal, a breach of traditions so severe that it could tear our worlds apart, filled me with dread. Yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, there was an undeniable pull, a magnetic force that had drawn us together from the very beginning. Despite the looming threat of exposure, the passion we shared burned brighter than ever, defiant in the face of societal norms and familial expectations. As the days passed, the tension in our lives grew exponentially. I could see it in Arna's hesitant glances and in Ayansh's furtive, troubled expressions. The truth was a constant presence in the background, threatening to spill over at any moment. And with every passing hour, the walls around our secrets seemed to close in tighter. In the midst of this internal chaos, I found myself standing at a crossroads. I had to choose whether to continue living this dangerous double life or to confront the impending storm head-on. Would our love survive the inevitable fallout, Or were we doomed to be consumed by the very passion that had brought us together? The night before the fateful confrontation, I sat alone in the quiet of my apartment, the soft hum of the city outside mingling with the pounding of my heart. I knew that the choices we made in the coming days would define our futures, and that there might be no turning back. With a deep, shuddering breath, I resolved to face whatever was coming, even as the shadows of our secrets loomed ever larger. In that solitary moment, I realized that our hidden ties, no matter how delicate, were about to be tested in ways we could never have imagined. The unraveling had begun, and there was no escaping the storm that was now fast approaching. The collision was inevitable. As days turned into weeks, the careful walls we had built around our secret began to crumble under the relentless pressure of truth. The double lives we led, one of public propriety and one of forbidden passion, started to converge in ways that none of us could have foreseen. In the days that followed, every whispered conversation, every furtive glance, became a prelude to a confrontation that would shake the very foundation of our lives. It began with the smallest of cracks, a misplaced comment at a family gathering, a lingering look between relatives that spoke louder than words. Ayanksha's once impenetrable calm was slowly giving way to a storm of internal conflict. I could sense the weight of his thoughts in the quiet moments after our dinner parties, when he would retreat into silence, eyes fixed on nothing in particular, as if trying to decipher an unreadable message. His struggle between duty and desire was visible, even if he tried desperately to hide it. At home, the atmosphere grew heavy with unspoken tensions. Arna, too, found herself trapped in the crossfire of conflicting worlds. Her eyes, which once shone with the light of rebellious freedom when we met in secret, now mirrored a growing despair. I watched as she tried to balance the expectations of a traditional family with the pull of the love we shared. Every time I saw her, there was a glimmer of fear. Fear of being discovered, of losing not only her identity, but also the love that had come to define her world. One evening, the collision of our worlds reached a breaking point. It was a cool autumn night, and the family had gathered at Ayanksha's home for a celebration that was meant to honor his career achievements. The grand hall was adorned with lights and decorations, a stark contrast to the dark turmoil simmering beneath the surface. I could see the tension in Ayanksha's eyes, the way he kept glancing towards a side door, as if expecting someone to burst in at any moment. During dinner, as stories and laughter filled the room, Ravi, a distant cousin known for his candid nature, leaned over to Arna. In a hushed tone, he remarked, "Sometimes, one can't hide everything forever. The truth has a way of coming out when you least expect it." His words sent shivers down my spine, and I could see Arna stiffen, her smile faltering. It was as if Ravi's comment had shattered the fragile illusion that everything was still under control. After dinner, the collision was unavoidable. The family had gathered in the drawing room, and as the conversation turned to old memories and shared secrets, a voice from the back startled everyone. It was one of Ayanksha's aunts, who, with a mix of indignation and sadness, began to hint at long-held suspicions about the unusual dynamics in the household. Her words, laced with both sorrow and reproach, reverberated through the room. "There is more to this family than meets the eye," she said, her gaze shifting meaningfully between Ayanksha and Arna. The silence that followed was deafening. The revelation spread like wildfire. In that moment, the carefully maintained boundaries dissolved, and our private lives collided with public scrutiny. Ayanksha, trying to maintain his composure, attempted to dismiss the insinuations, but the damage was done. I saw the despair in his eyes, a man torn between the rigid demands of tradition and the unpredictable force of his desires. The facade of respectability was cracking, and with it, the foundation of everything we had tried to preserve. Arna, caught in the middle of this storm, broke down in tears. I rushed to her side, but even as I tried to comfort her, I felt the sting of betrayal, not from her, but from the relentless expectations of a world that refused to understand our love. In the midst of that chaotic night, voices rose in anger and disbelief. Family members who once shared polite smiles now hurled accusations and bitter remarks, each one a blow to the delicate heart of our hidden union. In the confusion, Ayangsh stood and tried to restore order. His voice, usually so measured, cracked with desperation. "Enough," he cried. "We are a family bound by love and honor." But his plea fell on deaf ears. The collision of worlds had left little room for reconciliation. The cultural expectations of our community clashed violently with the raw truth of our emotions. There was no longer any room for half-truths or secret smiles. Everything was laid bare. That night marked a turning point, a moment when the inevitability of our choices became undeniable. I left the house with a heavy heart, the echoes of anger and sorrow following me into the cool night air. As I walked alone on the quiet streets, I could still feel the tremors of that fateful evening. The love that had once provided solace and escape now stood as a symbol of our divided lives. The collision of our worlds was not merely a family scandal, it was the meeting of two irreconcilable truths. On one side were the immutable traditions and expectations of a past steeped in honor and duty. On the other were the fierce, unyielding emotions that defied definition, a love that refused to be confined by societal norms. In that collision, each of us was forced to confront not only the consequences of our secret, but also the deeper question of who we truly were. As I stood beneath the dim glow of a street lamp, my mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. Would the aftermath mend the fractured pieces of our hearts, or were we destined to wander, forever haunted by the choices we had made? With the bitter taste of betrayal and sorrow lingering in the air, I realized that the true battle was just beginning, a battle between the forces of tradition and the wild, uncontainable spirit of love. The storm had passed, or so it seemed, and in its wake, we were left to gather the shattered fragments of our once secret world. The fallout from that tumultuous night of revelations rippled through every corner of our lives, leaving behind scars that time might never fully heal. I, Maria, now find myself standing amid the wreckage, compelled to reflect on the choices we made and the irreversible changes that followed. In the days after the fateful confrontation, the air was thick with silence and unspoken remorse. Ayangsh, who once carried himself with such dignified composure, was now a broken man, torn between the heavy burdens of tradition and the crushing guilt of the life he had led. His home, once a haven of order and respect, had become a battleground for emotions too raw to conceal. Each family member wore their pain like a cloak, and even the walls seemed to echo the sorrow that had seeped into every corner of our existence. For Arna, the revelations were particularly devastating. The collision of her secret love and her family's expectations had forced her into an unbearable limbo. I watched her wander through days with eyes that had lost their spark, those eyes that once gleamed with defiant hope now clouded by regret and confusion. She retreated into herself, grappling with the overwhelming weight of betrayal and the shattering of every illusion she had ever held dear. The pain of being caught between her own heart and a world that demanded conformity was a wound that ran deep, one that could not be easily healed. As for me, the duality of my existence left me stranded in a realm of constant self-questioning. I had always believed that love, no matter how forbidden, could offer a sanctuary from the mundane. But as the days turned into weeks, the cost of our illicit passion became painfully clear. The clandestine meetings that once filled me with exhilaration had now transformed into memories laced with regret and an abiding sense of loss. I found solace in quiet moments of reflection, poring over old photographs and mementos of a past when hope still danced in our eyes. Yet, every cherished memory was tinged with the bitter reminder that our choices had irrevocably altered the course of our lives. In the aftermath of the collision, our family was forced to confront not just the external repercussions, but also the internal dissonance that had been building for so long. Ayangsh tried to restore order by clinging to the familiar rituals of our traditions, yet it was clear that nothing could ever be the same again. At long-forgotten family gatherings, conversations carried an undercurrent of pain, a muted acknowledgement of the secrets that had been laid bare. Even the most cherished traditions now felt like relics of a bygone era, overshadowed by the new reality that loomed ominously on the horizon. One evening, I found myself alone in a small park, the cool night air offering a temporary reprieve from the chaos of my thoughts. The city around me was alive with distant laughter and the hum of life, yet in that quiet solitude, I could feel the full force of our collective sorrow. I wondered if we could ever mend the broken bridges between us, or if the wounds were destined to remain open. The path ahead was uncertain, a maze of questions with no clear answers. How would Ayangsh find redemption after his tangled web of deceit? Could Arna ever reclaim the vibrant spirit that once defined her? And what of me? Was there a future beyond the bittersweet memories of our forbidden love? In the stillness of that night, I made a silent promise to myself. I would no longer be defined solely by the pain of our past or the scars of our mistakes. Instead, I vowed to embrace the lessons of our journey, the courage to love beyond boundaries, the resilience to endure heartbreak, and the determination to forge a future where authenticity triumphed over tradition. Even if our paths diverged and the fragments of our shared story scattered to the winds, the echoes of our love would continue to shape who we were. Days turned into months, and slowly, tentative steps toward healing began to emerge. Ayangsh started seeking quiet counsel from a trusted friend, grappling with his inner demons in a bid to reclaim some semblance of honor. Arna, too, began rediscovering her voice through art and poetry, a language that allowed her to express the pain and hope intermingled within her soul. And I found solace in writing, in sharing every raw emotion and every fragile dream with those who dared to listen. My words became a lifeline, a way to document not just the tragedy, but also the beauty of a love that, despite its consequences, had taught me so much about the human spirit. Yet, even as we took tentative steps toward rebuilding our lives, the shadow of that fateful night lingered, a reminder that some truths, once unleashed, can never be fully recaptured. Our family story was now etched with both sorrow and hope, a bittersweet narrative that defied easy categorization. It was a reminder that life is as unpredictable as it is beautiful, that even in the darkest moments, there lies a spark of possibility. And so, as I sit here today, penning down these reflections, I ask you, dear viewers and listeners, to join me on this journey of resilience and redemption. If you found a piece of truth in these words, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories of passion, heartbreak, and hope. Your support means the world to us, and together, we can continue to explore the depths of life's most profound emotions.